Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making minimal tech house bass inspired by Chris Lake and Fisher's song Somebody. And we're going to find out if we can do this in under 15 minutes by using the 80-20 rule of tech house bass. What you're listening to right now is the track that we'll be working on, and now what you're looking at is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on in this video. In particular, this group right here, this bass group, is what we'll be focusing on, and we'll be going in order how I actually created things, starting with the pattern, the subs, and then the mid bass for the character. So you can kind of emulate this in your own workflow as you're building out your own tunes and working on your bass. All in all, it really only took me about 10 or 12 minutes to create this bass line and this sound. And this entire track, if we zoom out, have a look at this, it's been completely arranged, mixed, mastered, and it's completely ready to go. And this only took me about 4, maybe 4.5 hours over the course of maybe 3 or 4 days to complete, which is pretty fast, even for me, to be honest. And if finishing songs faster, kind of like this, is something that you'd like help with, I've created a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one song every single week, just like this. Just visit the link that's in the description or on screen right now to grab your copy of the Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit for free. And with that said, let's jump into this. Alright. So first, let's take a listen to the bass. And so first, let's take a look at the pattern. So what I did here is, I think I first started by setting the scale to what the key of the track actually was. And I just did this by looking at the song on Beatport. And that way I can kind of play around with the notes, making sure that everything is in key. And really the main thing here, that kind of 80-20 rule that I teased, is we can see here that we actually have the Somebody track by Chris Lake and Fisher in the project file. And this way what I'm able to do is I set up the S key so that I can flex between our track and the reference track. And I can use this as a way to pick the right sounds, make sure that the pattern is similar, and one of the biggest things is make sure that the volumes are correct. Really, when it comes down to it, sound selection and the volumes is going to be that 80-20 rule, that fast track to getting a really solid sounding sound in bass, in tech house, whatever you're working on, by referencing against the professional track yours to sound like. So it would kind of look something like this. This is the reference, and then flipping to ours. You can hear it's definitely a little bit different, and right now we only have the subs on. We're going to be adding in the mid bass in a second, but right now I really want to focus on the pattern. And so really what I did was just flick back and forth between the reference and this one, and kind of pick the right sounds and the right notes or similar notes to kind of get a similar vibe to start, and then slowly kind of change things up a little bit so that it could not be a carbon copy. I like to use them as inspiration and then slowly change things up so that I can actually use it as an original production in some kind of way. So that's a look at the pattern. I can't tell you too much about the music theory. That's not something I'm really good at, but we can get into the sound design next. So the first thing is, one thing that I like to do is layer up the bass in usually about 2 layers. The first is to have a sub bass like this, and the reason is twofold. One is that when you're using a sub to kind of select the right patterns and get the right notes down, it's a really clean sine wave basic sound, and it's similar to writing songs or melodies and chords using like a piano sound or a guitar. It's very neutral. You can really focus on the pattern and the note first. In addition to that, by having a sub track that's separated from the rest, like the mid bass and the high end of your bass, you have a little bit more control in making it so that the sub can really focus on getting that low end sound, that pure, nice low end, and then you can use the mid bass as an additional layer to add that character and that vibe. Taking a look at the actual sound here, really just using Ableton Operator, just basic sine wave. Just give you a second to listen to that. And what I just did was mapped a bunch of kind of typical macros that I would usually use, mostly just different levels of drive or saturation, so that I can bring in these different saturations, and that kind of gives a little bit more of a cool vibe, as well as makes it so it's easier to hear on like laptop speakers. In addition to that, I also have a one knob sidechain plugin here, kind of just using volume shaper to go against a quarter note, which is usually what the kick drum's playing, so you don't have to mess with compressors and sidechaining them and all that kind of stuff. You can just dial it all from here. And then a look at, that's really just the sub sound here, very simple. And if you want access to like these little presets and all these samples that I've made here, you can download this project file so you could extract everything and see everything in detail. And you'll also get access to, I'm dropping something like this every single week, so you'll get weekly project files as well as all the project files that I've created in the past as well. There'll be links to that into the description if you want to have a look at that and get really into this. But with that said, main thing here is kind of getting that sub sound down, and the next thing is adding in this mid bass layer. So let's have a listen to that. And so in the original track, it's definitely more of like an analog bass kind of synth. Usually I like to go for kind of like this bass guitar sound. It's just kind of my preference and a little bit of more of my signature sound. So you'd want to probably go for some kind of like Moog set like bass sound if you wanted to fully recreate it. I also would recommend trying to do some kind of soul searching and find your own kind of signature sounds, and a bass is a good place to find that. In particular, you might have a look at this and notice that there's no MIDI. So what I've done is if you click on a MIDI track and you click on the top here, so normally it'll say all ins, and that's where it's going to look for the MIDI on the track. But if instead if you click a different MIDI track, it'll actually pipe in the MIDI from this track, subs, into this track here. And what's useful about this is that way you don't have to like copy and paste all the MIDI over. And then also if you ever make any changes throughout like your song creation process, you're not going to have to copy it over several times and try to fix it. It just automatically, any change on the sub layer is going to show up on the bass guitar layer. In addition to that, what I do is I usually have a pitch device here. So if you're, for example, the octave of the sub is too low or too high compared to your mid bass sound, you can quickly just change the pitch here. So in this instance, I moved it up 2 octaves. Then I'm running this into an Ableton sampler device where I sampled a kind of sound that I found in like that Omnisphere Trillion, which has a bunch of really cool bass sounds, but I feel like it kind of has a lot of CPU load. So I found the sound that I like to use a lot in all my songs, sample it out and drop it into this Ableton device. That way it's a lot easier to control. In addition to that, what I'm doing is I have a little bit of this SMP circuit saturation, bringing it up the saturation a little bit, kind of filling out the sound a bit. And then I did play with the ADSR a little bit, brought the attack up a little bit, so it's kind of similar to like a sidechain kind of pumping sound, and then brought down the decay and the release so that it's a bit tighter against the sub sound. Other than that, a little bit of EQ going on here. So when you're doing a sub track versus a sub track with a mid bass track, on that mid bass, you're going to want to get rid of a bunch of the lows. So I have here at 170 hertz, removing a bunch of the lows. This way the subs is really taking care of all that low end, and we're not having too much like muddiness coming in from the mid bass layer. Other than that, I did kind of play with a little bit of the top end, so rolled off a bunch of the highs with both a high shuff as well as a low pass filter to make sure that it doesn't sound too like crispy and high on the top end, but I kind of mix it in a little bit and mold it into the overall bass sound. That I'm running it into a one knob width plugin, kind of pushing things to the left and right, making it a little bit more stereo, making space in the middle for that sub bass to shine. And then again, very similar, I have that one knob sidechain in like a little macro device here, so it's very easy to just complete out that task with one knob instead of having to do all that compression sidechaining nonsense. Makes things a lot easier having this custom channel strip, and this is something that I have on every single one of my tracks. Just makes things a lot easier. It's very simple. A couple moves that I'll do every single time when I'm creating songs and mixing as I go. Very simple moves, makes it a lot easier to mix as you go. Yeah, that is a look at the bass for this. Hello again, my friend. Hopefully you found that video useful. If you'd like to follow along yourself with the 5-step song finishing checklist, there will be a link in the description below where you can get access to that completely for free, and it's going to help you finish your songs a lot faster and better than ever before. If you found this video useful, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. But really the best thing I can do for you is hook you up with that free checklist, so make sure you check that one. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video, my friend. Have a good one.